The single tear that escaped Anna's eye and traced a path through the faint dusting of flour on her cheek was a quiet victory for the man standing over her. From the back of the kitchen, his hands plunged in scalding dishwater, Keanu Reeves, disguised as a nobody dishwasher named John, saw it all. Have you ever had to hide your tears at a job you desperately needed? Where are you watching from today? Because the slow-burning revenge he plans for this smug, cruel bully is one of the most satisfying stories we've ever told. And you need to see how it ends. It was Keanu's second day, undercover, at Fry's own location, number 447. He'd come for a documentary, a feel-good piece about a CEO reconnecting with his roots. But his real mission was to discover why this specific branch, despite decent customer traffic, was bleeding money. 6 hours into his first shift, every muscle in his body screamed in protest. His hands were covered in tiny burns from the fryer, and his pride had been deep fried around hour 3 when he'd accidentally dumped a whole basket of fries on the floor. But it was the regional manager, Preston, who made Keanu's instincts prickle. Preston had arrived at noon, all crisp polo shirt and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He'd clapped Keanu on the shoulder, calling him fresh meat, and announced to the team, "We're all one big family here, right?" The employees had nodded. None of them had smiled. Keanu had built a career on reading people, and he knew a liar when he saw one. The confrontation with Anna started just after the lunch rush. Keanu watched from the service window as Preston approached her register, his movements slow and predatory. "Anna, Anna," he said, his voice oozing false concern, loud enough for a few customers to hear. "We seem to have a problem. Your drawer is short again, $40 this time." A wave of panic washed over Anna's young face. "What? That's impossible," she stammered. "I counted it twice." "The numbers don't lie," Preston said smoothly, tapping the screen. "You know the procedure, Anna. You have to cover the shortage. Otherwise, I'll have to file an official report with corporate." He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "And we both know what happens after too many reports." That was when the tear fell, a silent admission of defeat. She didn't argue, she didn't protest. She just nodded, her shoulders slumping. Keanu watched as she numbly pulled her worn wallet from her back pocket, her hands trembling as she counted out two $20 bills, her own money, her tip money, and placed them in the register. Preston gave her a patronizing pat on the shoulder. "Good girl. Just be more careful next time." He walked away with a satisfied smirk. Keanu felt a cold, sharp anger settle in his chest. This wasn't a manager correcting an error. This was an extortionist shaking down his victim. He looked at Anna, who was now desperately trying to hide her tears as she served the next customer, her face a mask of forced, heartbreaking composure. He'd seen that look before, years ago, in the eyes of people struggling to maintain their dignity against impossible odds. He'd started this company with a promise to himself that no employee of his would ever wear that look. He had come here for a simple business audit. He'd expected to find inefficiency, maybe some waste, a management training issue. He hadn't expected to find this calculated, systemic cruelty. The mystery of the bleeding profit margins suddenly became crystal clear. The money wasn't just disappearing from the company, it was being stolen, dollar by dollar, tear by tear, from the pockets of his most vulnerable employees. As Anna finished her transaction, she caught Keanu's eye through the service window. For a split second, her mask slipped, and he saw the raw, pleading despair underneath. It was a silent cry for help. And in that moment, Keanu's mission changed. The documentary was no longer important. The quarterly earnings call could wait. The polite, disconnected world of the CEO vanished, replaced by the raw, immediate reality of this kitchen. He was no longer just a boss in disguise. He was a witness. And the scene he had just watched was not a simple disciplinary action. It was a declaration of war. He hadn't come here to save his company's bottom line. He realized now he'd come here to save a person's soul. And Keanu Reeves always finished what he started. The image of Anna's single defeated tear burned in Keanu's mind long after his shift ended, back in the sterile anonymity of a downtown hotel suite. A world away from the grease and grime of the diner, he finally shed the disguise. The cheap, scratchy work shirt came off, followed by the contact lenses that dulled his eyes. As he looked in the mirror, the familiar face of Keanu Reeves stared back, but his expression was one he hadn't seen in years. A cold, quiet fury. He had come to fix a leak in a spreadsheet, and instead, he had found a rot in his company's soul. He sat down at his laptop, the city lights glittering beyond the vast windows. He wasn't a dishwasher anymore. He was the owner, the architect of this entire system, and he was about to use his master key to unlock every secret in his digital kingdom. He pulled up the records for Fry Zone location number 447, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He went straight to the end-of-day cash reports, the digital trail that could not lie. Or so he thought. The numbers were perfect. Impossibly, maddeningly perfect. According to the official corporate records, Anna's drawer had balanced to the penny. Every register, every shift, for the past 6 months showed no significant shortages, no discrepancies. The $40 Keanu had watched her pay out of her own worn wallet had simply vanished from the official record, absorbed into a perfectly balanced lie. He felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just a simple bully extorting his staff. This was a sophisticated, systematic fraud. Preston wasn't just cruel, he was smart. He was creating a phantom debt, forcing his employees to pay it, and then cooking the books to erase any evidence. It was a perfect crime, hidden in plain sight, with the victims themselves made complicit in their own exploitation. Firing him wouldn't be as simple as pointing a finger. He needed to prove a crime that, on paper, did not exist. He returned to the diner the next day as John, the quiet dishwasher. But now, everything looked different. The friendly chatter between employees sounded strained. The clatter of plates felt like a countdown. And Preston's presence was a palpable, menacing weight in the air. Around mid-morning, Preston approached him while he was clearing a table. "John, isn't it?" he said, his smile as bright and hard as a polished stone. "Heard you're a hard worker. I like that." "Just trying to earn my keep," Keanu replied, his voice deliberately meek. "Good man," Preston said, clapping him on the shoulder, his grip just a little too firm. "You should know, we value loyalty here at Fry Zone. People who work hard and know how to keep their mouths shut about what they see, they go far." He winked. "You understand what I'm saying, right?" It was a warning wrapped in the guise of friendly advice. Preston had seen him watching yesterday. The message was clear. "I see you. Stay in your place." The game had begun. The day ended in a blur of exhausting, repetitive work. Keanu had decided to stay silent, to observe, to let Preston think he was just another beaten-down worker. As he was walking to his car in the dimly lit employee parking lot, a young man hurried to catch up with him. It was Carlos, another line cook, a kid barely out of his teens. "Hey," Carlos said, his voice a nervous whisper. He kept glancing over his shoulder toward the diner. Keanu stopped. "Something I can help you with?" "No, man, I need to help you," Carlos stammered. "Look, Preston, he came to me after you left. He told me to watch you." "Watch me?" Keanu asked, his senses on high alert. "Yeah. He thinks you're a corporate spy or something. He said to report back on anyone you talk to, anything you do that's out of the ordinary." Carlos shook his head, his eyes wide with fear. "Listen to me, man. Just keep your head down. Don't ask questions. Don't talk to Anna. Preston is dangerous. A few months ago, a guy tried to report him for the shortages. The next week, he was fired for stealing inventory. It was a total setup. People who cross him, they don't just get fired, they get ruined." He looked back toward the diner one last time. "Just be careful." And with that, he was gone, jogging to his own car and speeding out of the lot. Keanu stood alone in the empty parking lot, the weight of the young man's warning settling on him. His investigation wasn't a secret anymore. He was a target. Preston was not just a thief. He was a paranoid tyrant who had his own network of spies, a man who would frame and destroy anyone who got in his way. This wasn't a simple audit. It was a war, and he had just been told the enemy knew he was coming. Carlos's whispered warning echoed in Keanu's mind as he drove back to the hotel. "Preston thinks you're a corporate spy." The thought should have been alarming, a sign that his cover was blown. Instead, it brought a cold, clarifying focus. The game of cat and mouse was over. Now, it was a direct confrontation, even if only one of them knew the true stakes. Keanu had to move faster, be bolder. He couldn't just observe the injustice anymore. He had to dismantle it from the inside, and he couldn't do it alone. He knew he needed an ally, a voice from the inside. And there was only one person who had already risked everything by writing that first desperate plea for help. He needed Anna. The next day, the tension in the diner was thick enough to cut with a knife. Preston watched Keanu's every move, a smug, predatory glint in his eyes. Keanu, in turn, played the part of the intimidated new guy perfectly, keeping his head down, scrubbing dishes with a feigned clumsiness, all while waiting for his moment. He didn't have to wait long. Preston, emboldened by his perceived power, decided to escalate. He created another, larger shortage in Anna's drawer. $80 this time. He didn't just tell her to pay it. He dragged her into his glass-walled office, the door pointedly left open, and began a quiet but vicious tirade, berating her for her incompetence and carelessness in front of the entire staff. It was a power play designed to humiliate Anna and send a clear message to Keanu. This is what happens to people who cause problems. Keanu watched her crumble under the assault, watched her once again reach for her wallet. That was his cue. He knew Preston wouldn't leave the diner for lunch, too paranoid to let Keanu out of his sight. So, he orchestrated a small, controlled disaster. He accidentally dropped a full 5-gallon bucket of grease from the fryer, sending a slick, disgusting tidal wave across the kitchen floor. The chaos was immediate. Cooks shouted, servers slipped, and Preston, roaring in fury, was forced to leave his office to deal with the massive, time-consuming cleanup. "You useless idiot!" he screamed at Keanu. "Get a mop, now!" "Yes, sir," Keanu said, his face a mask of apologetic incompetence. But as Preston turned his back, Keanu made a beeline, not for the mop closet, but for Anna, who was still standing by her register, shaken and pale. He's distracted for at least 10 minutes, Keanu said, his voice low and urgent. Meet me by the back dumpster, now. Before she could protest, he was gone, disappearing into the chaos. 5 minutes later, in the cold, smelly alleyway, she found him waiting. What do you want? She asked, her voice trembling, her eyes darting around as if expecting Preston to materialize from the shadows. If he sees us talking, he won't, Keanu said, cutting her off. He looked directly at her, his gaze intense and sincere. I believe you, Anna. I saw what he did. Both days. She stared at him, suspicion warring with a desperate hope. Who are you? Carlos said Preston thinks you're some kind of corporate spy. Does it matter who I am? If I can help? He countered. He pulled the crumpled, folded napkin from his pocket and held it out. Her note. You reached out for help. You chose me. Give me a reason to believe that wasn't a mistake. That was the moment her defenses shattered. Tears she'd been holding back all day finally welled in her eyes. He keeps a second set of books, she whispered, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. A little black ledger. He logs the real numbers in it, the money he takes. He thinks it's his secret weapon, proof of how much he's saving the company if they ever question his methods. He keeps it locked in his personal locker in the office. She shook her head, a wave of hopelessness washing over her. But it's useless. No one can get to it. Keanu's eyes narrowed. What if someone could? The key is on his keychain, she said. He never lets it out of his sight. He thought for a moment, the sounds of the chaotic cleanup still audible from inside. There's a staff meeting every Friday morning, right? Before the diner opens? She nodded. At 8 a.m. It's mandatory. Is he ever away from his keys during that meeting? A flicker of an idea crossed her face. He always makes the coffee. He leaves his keys on the office desk while he's in the kitchen. A plan began to form in Keanu's mind, dangerous and reckless. Anna, he said, his voice steady. I need you to do something for me. Something that will require a great deal of courage. Can you do that? She looked at the diner, at the place that had become her prison, then back at the stranger who was offering the first glimmer of hope she'd had in months. She took a deep, shaky breath. What do you need me to do? He told her the plan. It was simple. It was terrifying. And it all depended on her. As he finished explaining, they heard Preston shouting his name from inside. The 10 minutes were almost up. I have to go, he said. This Friday, Anna. It's our only shot. He slipped back into the diner just as Preston was storming toward the back door, his face a mask of fury. Keanu met him with a look of pure, believable idiocy. Sorry, boss. Couldn't find the right mop bucket. Preston just glared at him, a low growl of disgust in his throat. He had no idea that his entire criminal enterprise was about to be brought down by an alliance forged in a greasy alleyway. A plan built on a spilled bucket of oil and a brave young woman's final, desperate gamble for justice. The air in the diner on Friday morning was thick with an almost unbearable tension. Keanu, playing his role as John, cleaned the coffee station, his back to the staff meeting happening in the main dining area. His heart hammered against his ribs. The entire plan rested on Anna. He watched as Preston, pontificating about efficiency and loyalty, finally set down his jangling keychain on the edge of the manager's desk. That was the signal. In the dining room, Anna raised her hand. Preston, she said, her voice trembling but clear. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's an issue with the women's restroom. A major leak. It was the perfect distraction. A maintenance issue, a potential safety hazard, was something Preston couldn't ignore. "For God's sake," he grumbled, rolling his eyes as he stood up. "Can't anyone do anything right?" He stormed off toward the restrooms, leaving his keys unattended. Keanu moved with a speed that belied his clumsy dishwasher persona. He slipped into the office, his hands surprisingly steady. He grabbed the key to the locker, unlocked it, and there it was. A small, black, unassuming ledger. He didn't have time to read it. He pulled out his phone, his thumb swiping to open a secure camera app. He began photographing every single page, his hands a blur of efficiency. Page after page of dates, numbers, and names. Shortage, $60. Payout, Anna. Shortage, 40. Payout, Carlos. He was on the last page when he heard it, the sound of Preston's angry voice growing closer. Think. He couldn't just lock it and put the keys back. Preston would know someone had been there. So, he did the one thing Preston would never expect. He dropped the keys on the floor just inside the office doorway, slammed the locker shut, and slid the ledger under his work shirt. He slipped out of the office and was halfway to the kitchen just as Preston came around the corner. "What are you doing back here?" Preston snapped. "Just grabbing some more cleaning spray, boss," Keanu said, holding up a random bottle. Preston's eyes narrowed, but just then he spotted his keys on the floor. "Damn it," he muttered, bending down to snatch them up, more annoyed at his own perceived carelessness than suspicious of anything else. "Useless," he grumbled, and stormed back to the meeting. Keanu retreated to the dish pit, his heart pounding, the ledger a block of ice against his skin. He spent the rest of the day in a state of high alert, the ledger now hidden in his backpack in the employee locker room. That night, back in the security of his hotel suite, he finally examined his prize. The photos on his phone told a story far more damning than he had ever imagined. The ledger was meticulous. It detailed 6 months of systematic theft, not just from this location, but from 3 others under Preston's regional control. Over $100,000, stolen through faked shortages and extorted from the paychecks of his most vulnerable employees. Preston wasn't just a bully. He was the kingpin of a criminal enterprise operating right under Keanu's nose. The rage Keanu felt was cold and absolute. But it was quickly followed by a heavy sense of shame. How had he let this happen? How had he become so disconnected from the people who were the lifeblood of his company? He knew what he had to do. The plan had been to finish his week undercover. But the evidence was now too explosive to sit on. He was about to call his COO and set the final confrontation in motion when there was a sharp knock at his hotel room door. His blood ran cold. No one knew he was here. He opened the door a crack. It was Anna. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. "He knows," she whispered, pushing past him into the room. "Preston. He knows I distracted him. He cornered me after my shift. He said he saw the way you looked at him. He said he's going to ruin me. He's going to tell corporate I was in on it, that I helped you steal from the company. He's going to ruin us both." She was shaking uncontrollably. "We have to do something." Keanu's mind raced. Preston was moving faster than he'd anticipated, trying to discredit his witnesses before the axe could fall. "It's okay, Anna," he said, trying to calm her. "He's just trying to scare you. He has no idea who I am." "Doesn't he?" she asked, her voice trembling. And then everything went wrong. The hotel room door, which hadn't fully latched, was kicked open. Preston stood in the doorway, a triumphant, venomous smirk on his face. And he wasn't alone. Beside him stood the head of corporate security, a man Preston had on his payroll. "Well, well, well," Preston said, his eyes flicking from the terrified waitress to the man she had run to for help. He looked Keanu up and down, taking in the expensive hotel room, the powerful laptop, the suit jacket slung over a chair. "I knew it," he said, a look of pure, malevolent glee in his eyes. "A corporate spy. And it looks like I just caught you both in the middle of a conspiracy." He nodded to the security chief. "Get them." The world seemed to slow to a crawl. The security chief, a burly man whose loyalty Preston had clearly bought, stepped into the room, his hand reaching for his side. Anna let out a small, terrified cry and shrank back. Preston's smile was a mask of pure, triumphant evil. He had them. He had caught the spy and his accomplice, caught them in a hotel room, far from the diner. His narrative was already writing itself. A disgruntled employee and a corporate investigator conspiring to frame a dedicated manager. Keanu didn't move. He didn't panic. He just stood there, a strange, unnerving calm settling over him as he met Preston's gaze. "This is a very, very big mistake, Preston," he said, his voice quiet, almost conversational. "Oh, I don't think so," Preston sneered. "I think this is the end of the line for you and your little friend. Now, you're going to hand over that phone, and we're going to have a little chat about what happens next." The security chief took another step forward. Keanu held up a single hand, a simple gesture that was not a plea, but a command. The man stopped, a flicker of uncertainty on his face. He was paid by Preston, but he knew who signed his ultimate paycheck. "You're right about one thing, Preston," Keanu said, his eyes never leaving the manager's. "The game is over. But you've misunderstood who was hunting who." From his pocket, Keanu didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out his personal phone, the one he hadn't used all week. He tapped the screen once, activating the speakerphone, and placed it on the table. A new voice, crisp and female, filled the room. "Keanu, is everything all right? We heard shouting. The audio link is live." It was the voice of his COO. "Everything's fine, Maria," Keanu said calmly. "Our Mr. Preston was just explaining his management philosophy, along with his head of security, who I believe is on an unauthorized overtime clock right now. Isn't that right?" The color drained from the security chief's face. He looked from Keanu to Preston, the gears in his head grinding with the dawning, horrifying realization of his own stupidity. He took a slow, deliberate step back. Preston stared at the phone, then at Keanu, his triumphant smirk finally crumbling into pure, unadulterated panic. Who are you?" he stammered. Keanu just smiled, a cold, thin smile that held no humor. "I'm the guy who signs the paychecks for your boss's boss. I'm the guy who owns the names Fry Zone, Preston, and for the next 30 seconds, you. My name is Keanu Reeves." The name landed in the silent room with the force of a physical blow. Anna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Preston stumbled backward as if he'd been shot. The CEO, the founder. Not a corporate spy, not some low-level investigator. The man himself, standing here, in this room, dressed in the same cheap work shirt he'd been wearing all week. "As we speak," Keanu continued, his voice now like ice, "every piece of evidence from that ledger, along with a recording of this entire conversation, is being delivered to the district attorney's office. You won't just be fired, Preston. You'll be prosecuted." It was a total, absolute victory. The villain was exposed, the evidence secure, the hero revealed. It was the perfect ending. Except it wasn't. A new voice, cold and authoritative, came through the speakerphone. "That won't be necessary, Keanu." It wasn't Maria. It was a man's voice, Mr. Sterling, the chairman of the board. "Thank you for your theatrical work. We'll take it from here." Keanu froze, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. "Mr. Sterling, what are you talking about?" "The DA has everything." "The DA has been asked to stand down," Sterling replied coolly. "Preston," he continued, addressing the disgraced manager directly, "you are to report to headquarters tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. You and your legal counsel will be meeting with us to discuss the terms of your separation." Preston, who had looked utterly destroyed just moments before, now had a flicker of hope, of confusion in his eyes. "Separation?" Keanu repeated, disbelief coloring his tone. "Sterling, this man is a criminal. He's extorted over $100,000 from our employees. And a public prosecution of a high-level manager for systemic fraud would cost our shareholders hundreds of millions in stock value," Sterling retorted, his voice sharp. "It is not in the company's best interest to air its dirty laundry in public. We will handle this internally. Preston's career with Fryzone is over. But we will not be inviting a media circus and a dozen lawsuits. That is the board's final decision." The line went dead. For a long moment, the room was silent. Anna stared, her face a mask of confusion and renewed despair. Preston slowly began to understand. He wouldn't be going to jail. He'd be getting a golden parachute, a quiet exit with a fat severance check and an NDA to ensure his silence. He had lost the battle, but he had just won the war. He looked at Keanu, and for the first time, a look of genuine, triumphant pity crossed his face. Keanu had been beaten, not by the villain he was hunting, but by the very system he had created. He had exposed the rot, only to be told by his own board to cover it back up for the sake of profit. His power, which had seemed so absolute just moments ago, was a complete illusion. He turned away from Preston, unable to look at the man's smug victory. He looked instead at Anna, at the hope draining from her eyes, replaced by the same familiar, heartbreaking resignation. He had promised her justice. He had promised he could help. And in the end, he had failed. He was just another rich man in a suit, powerless against the cold, hard logic of the bottom line. His grand reveal, his moment of triumph, had turned to ash in his mouth. The real villains weren't just in the diners, they were in the boardroom. And he had just lost. The dead silence on the phone line was a judgment, colder and more final than any court could deliver. Preston, understanding the game far better than Keanu had given him credit for, slowly began to smile. It was a ghastly, triumphant expression. "Well, Mr. Reeves," he said, savoring the name, "it appears my separation package will be quite generous. Thank you for your service." He turned to leave, a swagger returning to his step. He had won. The system had protected its own. "Get out," Keanu said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Preston just chuckled and walked out, leaving the scent of his cheap victory in the air. Keanu stood in the center of the room, not looking at Anna, too ashamed to meet her eyes. He had made a promise, and he had failed. He was a king with no power, a CEO who couldn't even deliver the simplest form of justice. He heard a small, broken sound and finally looked up. Anna was crying, but not loudly. They were the silent, hopeless tears of someone who had dared to believe for a moment, only to have that belief crushed. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words tasting like ash. Anna, I am so sorry. It's not your fault, she said, her voice hollow. You tried. It's just the way things are. Men like him always win. And in that moment, hearing that utter soul-crushing resignation in her voice, something inside Keanu Reeves broke. Not his spirit, not his will, but the chains that had bound him to the corporate world he had so meticulously built. He had tried to fix the system from the inside and failed. Fine. It was time to build something new. The next week was a whirlwind. Preston disappeared, as promised, with a hefty severance package and a gag order. A new, equally cold regional manager was appointed. At Fry Zone location number 447, it was business as usual. The fear returned. The silence returned. It was as if Keanu had never been there at all. Anna and the other employees who had helped him were now marked, their futures at the company bleak. Then, on a Tuesday morning, Keanu Reeves called an emergency press conference. The business world expected him to announce his resignation. Instead, he walked to the podium, looked directly into the cameras, and announced something that sent shockwaves through Wall Street. He was resigning as CEO of Fry Zone, and he was selling his entire personal stake in the company, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stock. Effective immediately, he said, his voice calm and clear. I am divesting from a corporate culture that prioritizes profit over people. Mr. Sterling and the board were apoplectic. The stock plummeted, but Keanu was already gone. 2 weeks later, as Anna was finishing her shift, a group of lawyers in sharp suits walked into the diner. They didn't go to the manager's office. They walked straight to her. Miss Anna, the lead lawyer said, we represent a new entity, the People's Kitchen Collective. We have a proposal for you. In the back break room, they laid out the documents. Keanu Reeves had used a portion of his massive fortune to create a new company. He had bought out the lease on this very building, the one they were standing in. And he had established a new restaurant, the People's Diner. The documents they slid across the table weren't a job offer. They were an offer of ownership. He was giving the restaurant, the building, the equipment, everything, to her and the 6 other employees who had been victimized by Preston. The folder also contained a checkbook for a business account with an opening balance of $2 million. For startup costs and 2 years of salary for every employee, a handwritten note from Keanu explained. No profit margins, no shareholders, just good food and good people. Run it the way it was always supposed to be run. Tears streamed down Anna's face as she looked at the papers. She flipped to the last page. Tucked inside was another, smaller envelope. It was a personal check made out to her for the full $100,000 Preston had stolen from his employees, with an extra note. Pay your sister's tuition, then give the rest away however you see fit. You know who needs it most. As Anna and her co-workers stood crying and hugging in the break room, she glanced out the front window. Across the street, a construction crew was already working on another empty storefront, a new sign being prepped. It was another restaurant. And standing there, talking to the foreman, not in a suit but in a simple t-shirt and jeans, was Keanu. He wasn't a CEO anymore. He was just a man, building something new from the ground up. He caught her eye from across the street, gave a single, simple nod, and then got back to work. He couldn't get justice for her in the boardroom, so he had decided to deliver it on the street. He couldn't reform a broken system, so he built a new one right next door, founded on the one principle his old company had forgotten: people. You see, this story teaches us a powerful lesson. When the formal path to justice is blocked, sometimes you have to forge your own. It shows that real power isn't found in titles or in boardrooms, but in the courage to take action and do the right thing, no matter the cost. If this moving story of a different kind of justice touched your heart, please share it with everyone. Every like and comment helps spread the message that even when the system fails, human kindness can still prevail. In this story, Keanu had to face betrayal. But what happens when he witnesses an unimaginably cruel act right before his very eyes? Our next story is about a kind waitress who cried and pleaded, "Please don't fire me." She was punished just for her kindness. But what Keanu did next left everyone speechless. Click on the video appearing on your screen to watch it now. Thank you for being a part of our community.